Okay, so have you heard of this book, Think Again, by Adam Grant?
Oh, definitely. It's a good one. A really good one.
Well, we're doing a deep dive on it today. For those of you with towering to read piles,
You know who you
we're
are.
going to break it all down.
Yeah, no cliffhangers, just straight to those light bulb moments.
Exactly, just the good stuff. And speaking of light bulb moments, Grant really throws down a challenge with that BlackBerry story.
Oh, yeah, right. Talk about a cautionary tale.
I mean, picture this. You're at the top of your game, king of the hill,
Top dog.
and then boom, gone. Because you didn't see the change coming?
It's a perfect example of what Grant's talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being smart, even brilliant, isn't enough if you can't adapt.
You practically need to be Nostradamus to see what's next in this day and age.
Well, Grant wouldn't say fortune-telling. More like thinking like a scientist. About your own beliefs, even. Which, let's be honest...
Way harder than it sounds.
Yeah, we get so stuck in our ways.
That's where that incompetence blindness comes in,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
The less we know, the more sure we are that we've got it all figured out.
Classic. Like that friend who thinks they're a natural on the karaoke machine.
Nah. But yeah, it's like a train wreck you just can't look away from.
It's painful, but we've all been there. That's why Grant focuses on humility so much.
Not in a woe is me kind of way, though.
No, not at all. More like being open to being wrong,
Knowing that you don't have all the answers.
which can be tough for some folks. But that's the key to growth, isn't it? Being open to learning and adapting. Grant talks about confidence being about the goal you set for yourself, and humility being about how you get there.
Exactly. You can be sure you want to bake that amazing cake.
But maybe your first few attempts are going to be interesting.
Exactly. Maybe a little flat. Practice makes perfect. And you know, that reminds me of another big takeaway from Think Again, how we handle arguments or how we try to persuade people.
Because usually it's like a tug of war, right? You pull your way, I pull mine.
And whoever's got the strongest grip or yells loudest.
Wins, or so we think.
Yeah.
But Grant suggests something completely different.
Right. Ditch the rope. No more tug of war.
Build a bridge instead. Try to really understand the other person's side, even if you disagree with them.
Yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting. Grant says less is more when it comes to arguments.
Fewer reasons, but stronger ones.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's like, who hasn't tuned out when someone's just barraging you with a million different points? You can't even process it all.
It's information overload. But a couple of really strong points, well, that makes you stop and think.
That's it. And instead of lecturing, Grant's a big fan of asking questions.
Like a scientist would.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, here's why I'm right, try asking, what would have to be true for you to see it this way?
Whoa, that's good. That's really good. You're not just trying to win the argument anymore.
It's more about understanding. Now, speaking of changing minds, did you hear about Daryl Davis? This story is unbelievable.
Wait, the black musician who got KKK members to leave the Klan? How is that even possible?
I know, right? It seems crazy. But the thing is, Davis didn't go in there judging or yelling.
That's probably what everyone else does, right?
Probably. But he listened. He asked questions.
Yeah.
And he got those guys to confront the fact that a lot of their belief...
We're based on what? Coincidence? Chance?
Exactly. What if they'd grown up totally differently?
Yeah.
Would they still think the same way? Makes you think, huh?
It does. It really does. It's like that study Grant talks about with the Yankees and Red Sox fans, just asking them to imagine being a fan of the other team.
Just imagine it.
If their lives had been different, and it actually softened some of their views, suddenly the enemy wasn't so different after all.
It's amazing how much our upbringing shapes our worldview without us even realizing it.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what beliefs do we hold that we might see totally differently?
If we'd had different experiences.
It's a humbling thought.
Yeah, it really is. Like, are we really thinking for ourselves or just...
Just reflecting what we were brought up with.
Exactly. And this leads us to another tool Grant talks about for encouraging people to rethink things. Motivational interviewing. Have you heard of this?
Oh, for sure. Powerful stuff.
Instead of telling people what they should do, you're kind of guiding them to figure it out for themselves.
It's about empowering people to come to their own conclusions, right?
Like that vaccine whisperer Grant mentions, Dr. Gagnier.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Fascinating.
Instead of just telling parents, vaccinate your kids, he asks them questions that lead them to that conclusion on their own.
It's brilliant, right? Because people are way more likely to change when they feel in control.
It's like you're helping them uncover the answer that was already inside them all along. Like, help me understand what's most important to you. Not do this because I said so. Power.
It is. And it shows how important it is to meet people where they are. But one thing we have to watch out for, black and white thinking.
Oh, for sure. It's everywhere.
Like with Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, super impactful film, but it also shows how framing things in those really stark terms.
You're either with us or against us.
Exactly. It can actually make it harder for people to rethink things.
We do this all the time, right? Not just with big stuff like politics. We take complex issues.
And oversimplify them.
You're either right or wrong, good or bad, when really life's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's
Like we get stuck in this us versus them mindset, you know? Like there's only one right way to think.
Totally. And we all do it. But that's why it's so important to build a culture of rethinking. In our own lives, I mean. We were just talking about that black and white thinking trap, but how do we actually break free? How do we get better at rethinking? Grant actually gives us some pretty practical advice about that.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like I could use some practical advice sometimes. Lay it on me.
Well, one thing he talks about is thinking like a scientist, but like in your own life.
I do love a good analogy, but what does that even mean? Like, I can't exactly run experiments on all my beliefs.
No, not literally. It's more about being really questioning, like, are my beliefs still true based on what I know right now? Is there new information I should be looking at? Could I be wrong?
Yeah, so always kind of testing and updating your mental models based on new input,
That's a great way to put it. And Grant says we often get too attached to our beliefs.
which makes it almost impossible to change our minds, even when we should.
Ooh, yeah, I've been there.
Oh, we all have. It's like sometimes we'd rather be right than
That happens.
sometimes. But Grant suggests a cool shift in perspective. Instead of identifying so strongly with your beliefs, identify with your values.
Okay, now you're going to have to unpack that a little. Values versus beliefs.
It's subtle, but important. Beliefs are how we see the world right now, based on what we know. Values are those deeper principles, your sense of right and wrong. They're more, like, stable.
Okay, so instead of, I believe everyone should go to college, so I'm pro-education, it's more, I value education. And right now, I think college is the best way for most people to get there. But hey, I'm open to other paths too. You got it. That's exactly it. And that tiny shift can be so freeing. You're not attached to being right all the time. You can evolve without betraying what you truly care about.
That is kind of freeing when you put it like that. It's like taking off a pair of shoes that are too tight. You can still walk the same path, but now it doesn't hurt.
Perfect analogy, especially these days, right? Information overload, conflicting opinions everywhere.
It's like you need mental gymnastics just to keep up. You really do need to be able to roll with it, rethink things constantly.
It's a muscle. And like any muscle, you got to work it out.
Yeah.
Grant actually offers some tips for this. Like, one thing is to actually seek out information that challenges what you already think.
Ooh, I like that. It's like that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room.
They're in the wrong room.
Exactly. Get yourself around people who challenge you.
Yes. It's cozy in our echo chambers for sure. But growth. Growth happens when you're a little,
Uncomfortable.
yeah. So read stuff that makes you think. Talk to people you don't agree with. Play devil's advocate with your own beliefs, even.
Challenge yourself. Love it. What else?
He also talks about disagreeing,
Yeah.
but constructively. Not to win the argument, but to actually learn from each other.
Right, because it's not about being right. It's about getting closer to the truth.
Exactly. And that takes listening. Really listening, asking questions to make sure you understand, and being open to the idea that
That the other person might actually have a point.
it happens, or at least they have a reason for thinking what they think.
All right, totally. Even when we disagree, it's important to remember.
We're all on the same team here.
Yeah. Sometimes the best way to change someone's mind is to actually hear them out, connect with them.
So true. And that takes, well, it takes empathy, compassion, being able to see things from another perspective.
It all kind of comes back to humility, doesn't it?
You said it. We've touched on it, but it's important. Humility isn't about putting yourself down or anything,
It's more about realizing you don't know everything,
and that you're always learning and growing.
which means you could be wrong about anything, and that's okay.
More than okay. It's a good thing. That openness is what lets you stay curious. Keep learning. Because in this world, things change fast. We have to be able to adapt.
It can be scary to admit you don't have all the answers, but it's also exciting.
It is, because it opens you up to so much more. You can be more open-minded, more flexible, more adaptable to change. And that's the name of the game, isn't it?
It's funny how just talking about all this stuff from Think Again has me like actually seeing things differently. I swear, I was in a meeting earlier, and I was way more open to other people's ideas.
See? That's amazing. It's like Grant says, learning isn't about proving ourselves right. It's about,
Becoming more right.
huh, yeah, something like that. But really, it's about evolving your thinking. And it sounds like that's already happening for you, which is awesome.
Yeah,
But you're right. It's one thing to, read about this stuff.
but it's a whole other thing to actually live it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we've talked about rethinking in our personal lives, but what about at work? Most of us spend a crazy amount of time at work, right?
Right. So how do we make rethinking part of the culture?
And Grant has a lot to say about this. He uses that, that really sad story of the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster
Oh, yeah. Heartbreaking.
to show what can happen when an organization, even one full of really smart people, prioritizes performance over learning.
Because even the best companies can have blind spots, right? But that story was rough. Like, it seemed like NASA was so focused on being right, on looking good.
The people were almost afraid to speak up if they had doubts.
Exactly.
And that's the danger of a workplace where people don't feel psychologically safe.
Mm.
Grant talks about this a lot. It's not enough to just say, we want to hear your ideas.
You have to actually mean it.
Yes. People need to know it's safe to speak up, even if they disagree or they made a mistake, without being punished for it.
Like that saying, right? People don't care how much you know.
Until they know how much you care.
Exactly. You can say you value honesty and openness.
But you got to walk the walk.
100%. Actions speak louder every time.
And that's so important for leaders to get. They set the tone for the whole organization.
So what can leaders actually do to build that, psychological safety? It sounds kind of
Elusive?
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest things is to model vulnerability. Be willing to say, I don't know, or I messed up. Ask for help. When leaders do that.
It gives everyone else permission to do the same, right?
Exactly. Because if the boss can admit they're not perfect.
Then it's okay for me to be human too.
And it's not just what they say, it's how they react. When someone challenges them, do they get defensive or do they listen?
Are they actually open to learning something new?
Yes. Create that space where people feel safe to take risks, to throw out ideas without being shut down.
That's how you get innovation.
100%. And then it all comes back to what we've been talking about, right? Humility, curiosity, prioritizing learning over being right all the time.
When you have that kind of environment, not only do you get better results,
People are happier, more engaged.
makes you wonder why more organizations aren't like begging for this, right?
You'd think. But change is hard. And it starts with individuals deciding to, actually do things differently.
To walk the walk.
Yes.
So to wrap up our deep dive on Think Again, I think the takeaway is this. Embracing rethinking in our own lives, in our work, everywhere, it's not just a fluffy idea.
It's crucial if you want to thrive in a world that's changing faster than ever.
For sure. And it all starts with you. Be more humble, more curious, be more willing to question what you think you know.
Because you might be wrong.
And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's how we grow. So to all our amazing listeners out there, keep those minds open, stay curious, and remember,
There's always more to learn.
we'll see you next time.